everyone. Thank you for joining us this Friday. Excited to have you back as we continue to wrap up our educational sessions and the Uplift program this summer. Deborah will be one of our last educational sessions, and we're also extending and adding some more through August if you didn't get a chance. But with all that said, she was here last week, gave incredible insights on how to build a brand that customers trust. Today, we're taking a deeper dive into how to build visibility, credibility, and demand. With all that said, welcome back, Deborah. Very excited to have you again.
Thank you so much, Kennedy. Happy Friday, everybody. I'm sure everybody else was dancing a little bit along to the beat, especially since this is the last one of July for you. So congratulations for finishing out the summer. For those of you that are returning, thank you again for showing up to learn and grow together. And as Kennedy mentioned, we are going to be focusing on going from invisible to in demand. So I'm going to pivot here. And once again, we have a deck that is chock full with information that you will have access to after this so that you can use and also share with your constituents. And the playing rules here are there are no bad questions. As we roll into this, last week, we talked about brand, and some of the questions that were coming back from that already were around marketing. And for each of you, because I don't see you and I don't know what your brands are, that marketing plan is going to be customized for each of you. So this is a baseline for us to review how we're going to build visibility, credibility, and demand for startup growth. And I'm going to reiterate what I did last week. And there are a few slides in here that are going to be review with some additional content to them. But the whole opportunity here, first off, is to grow. You get noticed, raise your value, organize your resources, win business and people. And once again, reiterating, identify that one change that you want to make in 30 days. So last week it was about brand, and this week it's about activation. But let's take a step back, as usually this is a two-part series. Let's review the key takeaways. We talked about surveying the land. And, you can't start building a brand unless you really dig into the data, understand who you're going to be speaking to, and developing that customized solution and storyline, verbal first, then visual. And what we took away from that is, brand isn't just your logo. It's what people remember about you when you leave the room, what they say, that brand essence, the value that you provide. Brand creates trust. Trust is that word that is underlying throughout all these conversations. Trust accelerates your growth. It's clear positioning that attracts customers, and then clear messaging that attracts investors in the long run. So I gave you homework to really do this one sentence brand test of what does your company do? And if you can't answer that quickly, then somebody else is not going to be able to understand what you do either. I also gave you for those of you that have this down pat, think about that one challenge that you have right now and do the research to see how you can solve it, whether it's looking at your key competitors, asking a current customer or somebody that's with your business. Research is foundational in solving the problem. So before we kick in, I'm going to introduce the momentum engine, and you'll see that I have these 7 circles, and we're starting small here, and you will feel it grow and get bigger towards the back end. But last week talked about brand building, and today we're going to talk all about what do you do with it and how do you amplify it. Everyone in this room has some kind of expertise. Something, you solve something, you do something that creates value. And so expertise alone doesn't create growth in your company if nobody knows about it. So that expertise gets converted over to content. Those are your ideas, your insights, the stories, the proof that demonstrate what we know. And then we have to activate that with visibility. People they begin to see you, they hear from you, they discover you, and that visibility isn't enough. What really happens is the consistency winds up getting the valuable credibility that we're all looking for. So you go from the expertise to the content to the visibility, which then drives that credibility that then turns into those conversations. And those conversations are the ones that we really rely on to amplify our brands. And this is what happens where you don't have to chase people anymore. People are willing to talk about you and what you do differently. They turn into customers, and those happy customers then become advocates for your brand. So we see this 7-step process that carries you through. That's why I call it the momentum engine, because once it starts working, it really does start feeding itself. So as far as this is concerned, this entire presentation now comes down to the bottom line that people don't know that you exist, then they can't choose you. And if they don't trust you, then they won't. So how do we get the word out? How do we make these decisions of where your brand should be to create value? So the objectives for this session is why visibility matters, position before promotion, visibility today, and building your marketing engine. And let's dig into why visibility matters. And this is a little bit of a review from last week where we talked about brand awareness, driving sales and growth, and that competitive edge. And we're taking it a little bit further. We looked at this image and knowing that it is a Nike ad without having the name attached to the logo or a URL or any other supporting material. But brand awareness, once you've established it, it now gets carried to this next level where it isn't the finish line, it's the beginning. It's the visibility, the recognition, the credibility, and the preference, because people see you, they remember you, they believe you, and they wind up choosing you. From there, we go into how do we drive sales and growth. And so you want to connect your marketing efforts and your revenue and make sure that your analysis is ongoing. The process that we'll talk about here is honing in on that target market, identifying where they are and where you should be spending your money. We hear about, the throw the spaghetti at the wall scenario. And I actually just came from a meeting today where a client was spending an exorbitant amount on Google Ads. And, once they dug into it, they weren't getting the return on investment. And when they went a little bit further, they realized that the message that was being conveyed when somebody called in or emailed wasn't matching their brand. So, these are all interconnected, and making sure that the marketing efforts that we're investing in, the touch points are clear, the brand is consistent, and it's going to convert ROI. We also talked about competitive edge and making sure that you identify that target market, especially when it's crowded. You want to be looking pretty often at what your competitors are doing so that you stay relevant, and then hone your message as needed so that you stay in front of your consumers. So what is that process? So once again, it's research, execute, measure, and adjust. And the biggest thing that I want you to walk away with is that you don't do this once and it's not a set it and forget it. It winds up becoming a cyclical pattern where once you've executed, you measure, and then you see what's working, not working, make the edits, test it again, do additional research, and then go through this process again. Position before promotion. So once again, we go to our second phase of research. You've now already established who you are, what you do, the visual aspect of this, but research and brand go together to develop the next phase of planning. So what does that mean? So in this case, you're identifying your customer profile. What is that market position that you want to own? Whether you own it today or you need to own it tomorrow, this is where you wind up doing that research to see where the competitors are and where the holes are and how do you reach those individuals. Now, when we talk about the messaging, it doesn't mean that you speak differently. It's you go to market with who you are and what you do. It's just the content that you back it with, depending upon the target market, is then curated based upon what they value. So the brand messaging stays consistent, but the supporting content of the value of what you do then gets shifted to be relevant to that target market. You look at the buyer journey. Where are they? Where do they come into the funnel? How long does it take for them to convert? How many touch points? Where are those touch points? That way you can establish what your marketing plan should be. And then you back it with thought leadership. What is important to each of these individuals? Build out the content to support it, and then activate it. Typically at this point is where I would take this even further if I knew what your current target market was. In this case, I'm going to reinforce that consistency is key, making sure that your messaging across all of your platforms is consistent, depending upon social, and if you have different target markets that you're trying to reach out to, that is where your blog content will differ, or video posts, those types of things. But as far as the first impression of the brand and the value that you provide, you want to make sure that that is consistent across the board and your employees are living and breathing it. So how do we budget for this? And these are industry averages put to work. Some of you might be in this process already. Some might be, asking for funding, applying for a grant. My goal is to give you some kind of foundational formula so that it doesn't seem so daunting. And this is not a cut and paste. This is where you're going to have to do your research, but at least it gives you some kind of framework to work off of. So if the statistics are showing that on average, 7.7% of revenue was being allocated towards a marketing budget. That can go up or down based upon the size, but at least we have a baseline for what the averages are. Secondarily, we then see that 61.1% of that total marketing spend is going to digital channels. That could be social media, paid, email, content marketing. Depending upon what you are trying to achieve, that model will shift, but at least we have some numbers now that we can put into action. So I always like to show just an example so that you have a framework of, okay, how do I apply this now for my own personal brand and marketing strategy? So first of all, you want to make sure that your marketing investments are going to compound, that they're going to create those touch points that hit your target market. So we go out of the gate. Let's say that you're projecting that you're going to have $1 million in revenue. As we mentioned, 7.7% is typically what people are spending. That's an industry average. In this case, I'm going to say, let's go conservative. Let's go 5% of revenue. And then let's allocate 61% of that marketing dollars to your digital budget. We then are able to look at the most substantial and common digital subcategories. And I've put some industry standards here as far as Google and paid search. That's 40% of your budget. SEO and content is 25% of your budget. Social PPC and video marketing, 25%, and then email and SMS would be 10%. Now, if you are targeting an 80-year-old customer that might not be online as much as you would expect, of course, you're not going to spend 40% of your budget towards Google unless it truly makes sense. So like I'm saying here, this is a guideline of industry standards. Just if you're starting from scratch and you're like, okay, so how should I break this down? But do the research and then make smart decisions that are based upon the data, depending upon your product or service that you're offering. So the next thing you do is you calculate your total marketing budget. So you have $1 million in revenue, you take 5%, now know that you have 50,000 to work with. Now you're going to break it down to your digital, non-digital marketing. So we're taking that 0.61%. So we now know that 30,500 of it is going to go to digital. And then I take those percentages that I gave you from the digital subcategories to break them down. So at least I have a baseline of what I'm going to be spending for my digital spend during the year. Also, too, is we now take the non-digital marketing budget as well. So that residual is 19,500, and you can apply that to events and associations, sponsorships, and print. Yes, it goes quickly. The other question that comes with this is, how do I staff this? These numbers don't include staffing. So whether you have an internal person that you've hired to handle this, or you are going to be employing an agency like mine, or you're going to go the middle ground route where you need to align with a university who has a lot of students that have a requirement, typically anywhere from 130 to 150 hours for an internship that they have to fulfill before they graduate, or you're just looking for a freelancer or intern that will help you along this route. So this is a nice snapshot of just, okay, foundationally, how do I break down a number so that I can put dollars and cents together? Where the visibility happens today. And so we're going to look at these 4 key areas of website health, digital presence, social media, and AI. And so web, it hasn't changed. It is your 24/7 sales tool. And while we have all of these other messaging data, messaging points that are coming into our lives and AI has become more present, your website still is that tool. It is that hub. And I say this clearly, that your website is like, it is your core of your body. When you're working out and your core is strong, everything else moves more fluidly. And it is the same thing with your marketing strategies. You want to look at where your target market is, make those decisions, key decisions of what are the tactics that will hit your target market, but always drive them back to your web so that you use it as this tool to gain analytics and learn more about what is working or not working. So the foundation for that is, credibility, visibility, and trust. A professional online presence that comes with your brand consistency, clear services in an about section. Your FAQs are really important, especially in AI searches. Having key areas for investors, media, the media to go, demos, resources sections. The voice of this is going to be, slightly different from when you're targeting a consumer. So having those dedicated areas to send people to gain more information or to capture information and download a document is always recommended. And then also your trust signals, we're talking about trust again, those testimonials, the reviews, and the case studies that back and provide analytics of the value of what you're providing. As far as platforms and integration are concerned, a lot of times we hear, okay, well, I'm starting a Wix site. As far as the growth of that, we do recommend things that are a little bit more scalable, such as WordPress, Webflow, or Shopify, and ensure that you have outbound social links so that you're connecting the dots between your website and what you're doing from a digital perspective. Ensure that your user experience is easy. It's a given. It should be mobile friendly. Most people are on their phones right now. That's the first touch point. Make sure that the navigation is simple, and make sure that you have smaller bits of information that drive people through the process using CTAs, usually in a button form that is short, sweet, visible, and takes them pulls them through the funnel to gain more information. And last but not least are your lead capture and automation. Having those forms on key pages, automations, we're seeing this a lot with AI and the use of Claude to set up agents. So it's not as cumbersome. When you hit the size that you need to, integrating your CRM. And then if you don't have the ability within your existing website to build healthy landing pages, we always recommend something easy and affordable like Unbounce to be able to build those landing pages and drive people back to the website. Then we go to your digital presence and being discoverable. AI definitely is part of this conversation, and I've got another whole slide on it, but it can't confidently recommend you if it doesn't understand what you're providing. And that's where that key consistency in voice, tone, and brand, not just between your product or service, but you as yourself, as your own personal brand, is very important here. So making sure that your website, it's really showcasing that expertise, the FAQs and the case studies that I just mentioned. Your people, they should be elevating your brand and also carrying it forward on an even higher level. Make sure that their profiles, their LinkedIn pages, any kind of speaking engagement or thought leadership is consistent across the board. Third-party authority. This is where you start to get that trust goes on a higher level and your credibility is there. Then you're going to be asked to sit on a podcast, speak at an event, go to an association, provide reviews, get public relations. The next step then are those trusted platforms where you are also elevating your brand. Google, LinkedIn, Crunchbase, and G2 and Capterra, those are more so for your software industries where it's relevant. Making sure that you're keeping up with those profiles, making sure they're consistent. And especially the free ones are going to help with the searchability. People are doing it more where they are researching through AI to get a baseline before they visit your website or do additional research. And then you have those consistent signals of your company name, the descriptions, the expertise, the leadership. So visibility doesn't always equate to credibility. And there are these 4 bubbles that we need to touch on. The visibility gets the attention, but it's really the conversations that happen that create that demand on the back end. So it does take consistency and process and a methodology. It's not just visibility equals credibility out of the gate. So now we move to social media. It's really important to make sure that this is not just marketing. It's education, it's trust building and showcasing your culture. And in this case, we're not supposed to just be saying that we're an expert. We're supposed to be giving them reasons to believe it. So this is where that thought leadership goes to the next level. And sometimes we get stuck we write the pieces, they go to our website, but then we forget to re-amplify them through our social media and or email, text, whatever those other vehicles are. So LinkedIn, podcast, speaking engagements, newsletters, video, and founders posts help with supporting that information and putting you in that position of trust and credibility. Some tactical things, once again, is consistency is key. Our headers, our logos, and our overview content, make sure that those headers act as a billboard for you. Does it tell somebody what you do, what value you provide? And making sure that that same header is on your own personal page and your employees' pages. What are the tools that you can use? Some of the more affordable ones are Later for scheduling and Canva for design. From a brand standpoint, and especially with the minutia that is out there, and you're seeing a lot more that looks the same because of AI. I do recommend that you invest in a designer, especially a brand designer, to at least develop templates for your social media so that it feels like a branded experience. A webinar that I sat in on recently around LinkedIn measured, okay, look at your last 3 posts. What does it say about you? Is it accurate? Is it how you want to be personified? And make the adjustments there. We always recommend some kind of paid ad that is a page promotion or a follower ad that is targeted. Once you've identified who your personas are, put $50 or $100, especially on Facebook, on those pieces. A little bit more LinkedIn, you typically want to be putting at least $300 behind that ad to increase your followers so that as you're spending the time to create content, it's being amplified. And then showcase people as much as possible. We all navigate towards human touch. So showcasing people, yourself is really important. It's almost as important as babies and our pets in driving an engagement. Next, we have AI, and the general aspect of this is yes, you should be using it. The most important thing, though, is it does not replace you. It helps you create more content faster, but you should not be sacrificing your authenticity along the way. So feed it regularly. For me, I review and I analyze Risco all the time just to see, is the right content out there? Do I need to feed more? How do I want to be showing up in keyword searches as people are looking for my services? You should be doing the same. Also, too, as far as AI devices are concerned, Plod is one that you can use, which is a handheld device when you go into meetings with clients or you're out in the marketplace. It allows you to record conversations and turn them into data that you can forward onto your constituents and analyze on a higher level. Make sure that your professional and personal bios, there's consistency across all of it so it can be scraped. And once again, those Google reviews are really important for people not only finding you, but validating the outcomes and the value of what you provide. So AI scales execution, but the authenticity really creates the trust in the process. So turning marketing into a growth engine, we need to build this engine. And this is where you see that the bubbles have gotten bigger. You have to pick your expertise. You have to create, be very careful of where you're distributing and making sure that you are spending your money where it should be. Amplify through your employees, your partners, your investors, your customers, and your paid resources. Measure constantly and then repeat again. So I want you to activate and connect now. So what we've done in this distinction is we've gone from just a single brand to an activation program and process. And so now it's time for activation and for you to connect the dots. So as you saw, we were surveying the land and now we've built the building. And so the engine only works if you turn it on. And that's where you come in. And if people don't know that you exist, they can't choose you. And if they don't trust you, then they won't. So I go back to grow. What's the one change you are going to make now? Look at what you wrote last week. Look what you wrote this week. Create your top 3, create an action plan, and move it forward. And I'll open it up for questions.
I am muted. Thank you so much for walking us through this today. I don't see any questions come through quite yet, but it's been immensely helpful. I think some things I want to surface. One, love the shout out for Plod. I think that has been the greatest unlock of being able to recap things from meetings, even create content, revisit ideas. Love, would recommend it to everybody. And then the second, the framing of AI can't suggest your company if it can't find you. I think especially in TU, we've pushed a lot of automating your content, figuring out ways that AI can relieve the workload on you. But we haven't talked about how to make sure that you're popping up in those chats and making sure that your website can support that. So I think that's been a phenomenal thing to add that has actually not been thought of in these conversations. So thank you so much for adding that. If anybody has any questions, now's the time in the chat to share. But if not, I'll distribute this deck from Deborah as well to you guys. And please let us know if there's other ways that we can support you. But with that, Deborah, I know we're just about time. Thank you so much for sharing and taking your time on last Friday and this Friday. It's been immensely helpful. So with that,
enjoy Thanks for having me, and the conversation doesn't end here. So for all of those that are listening, once again, there are no bad questions. If you're running into a problem with your own brand and you'd like me to take a separate lens at it, that is what I'm here for. We're here to move each other forward. And I'm going to share an anecdote of somebody else that I listened to this week is we really are multipliers. So we don't get where we are without the help of others. And so to this kind of outreach and just being brave to say, do you know what? Can you help me? Can you look at this differently? Can I bounce this off of you? That's what I'm here for you to do. And I know that Kennedy is as well. So congratulations again on the completion of your cohort, and look forward to seeing how you amplify and uplift this information. Have a wonderful weekend.
Wonderful note to end on. Thank you so much, Deborah. See everyone.